Hey everyone, this is Robert Kennedy III, and I want to welcome everyone to the fourth, count 'em, one, two, three, fourth Learning Views webinar series sponsored by TrainingPros and Harrisburg University. Four Learning Views webinars. Yes, folks, we've got sequels, two more, and we'll catch up with Rocky. And I like having fun. Can you tell that? I'm looking at the chat board here, and there are a lot of people joining in. We've got Atlanta, Georgia, Rotana Williams, Finetta from Richmond, Virginia, Donna from Dallas, Kathy, Training Pros from NYC, Faith from Hyattsville, Maryland, my area. Love it. A lot of people are logging in, and I am so glad that people are here. So if you guys, I just mentioned Rocky, so I want to bring another little reference here. If you guys are ready to learn, I want you to type Yo Adrian in the chat box. Hot Lana, somebody said. All right. We're gonna have fun. Yo, Adrian. All right, thanks, Donna. Yo, I love it. Look at this. We're rolling. We are gonna have a lot of fun today on this webinar. So let's do it. As I mentioned, I'm Robert Kennedy III, and Adrian, look at this. I'm a relationship manager with Training Pros, and I'm based in the Baltimore, D.C. market. And in case you haven't heard, we have a lot of fun out here in this area. So today, as we mentioned right up top, this is called media selection, innovation in media selection. And we've got a great presenter today. And we want you guys to walk away from today's session better informed on media selection and how to start implementing these in your learning strategies, pursuing additional educational certifications in the L&D field that will allow you also as a consultant to develop types of solutions for your clients and your organizations, allowing them to be able to select media and use media a lot more effectively in their learning solutions. So let me tell you a little bit about Training Pros and our partnership with Harrisburg University. We're partnering on the Learning Views webinar series because we want to make sure that you guys have the latest developments that we're observing with our clients. And we want to demonstrate how Harrisburg University is able to provide a master's level program to professionals who want or need to pursue an advanced degree in the learning technology space. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about Training Pros first. So if you have watched the NBA Finals recently, a lot of championship teams, or one of the reasons why teams win is because they've got a great bench. They've got rock stars coming off the bench. As a matter of fact, the MVP, the most valuable player of the finals, was Andre Iguodala, who started the series on the bench, was the sixth man. So what Training Pros does is we're the bench. We are we provide the rock star talent that allows organizations, Fortune 100 companies, to be able to develop learning courses, modules, trainings, things that will help their employees and their organizations create the results that they need. So we provide contract L&D talent in the U.S. and a lot of major markets. We provide organizations the talent they need to design, develop, and deliver learning solutions. And one of the reasons that we are not just a regular staffing company is that the relationship managers are pros in the field themselves. And I'll give you a little bit of experience of my background. I have been in the educational, state, and federal market. I was a teacher for 10 years. I have had my own training company. So as far as online learning, when a company comes to me or says, hey, Robert, we need a bench, we need access to your bench, we're able to provide them the exact fit that they need, a great fit, because we need to understand, because I've got a greater understanding of where they are and what it is that they need. Now, let's tell you a little bit about Harrisburg University. We still have some people saying, yo, Adrian, love it. All right, so Harrisburg University translates the latest developments in learning technologies into a master's program for professionals responsible for building skills and capabilities in corporate organizations. And Harrisburg provides students with leading edge approaches and skills to help them apply existing and emerging learning technologies in a variety of learning environments. Now, today's, okay, I'm going to say, I'm going to stop here. I'm just kind of seeing the the chat window, and I've got to stop because there's somebody that says originally from Brooklyn, and she just says yo. And I grew up in the Bronx, so I've got to stop for the New York people just for a second, just to say yo. Okay. So I'm going to move on and tell you a little bit about our program today. Blended learning really allows a seemingly limitless selection of choices for how learning is transmitted to the learner. Do you know how to weave together the best possible delivery strategies into a cohesive design? And how do you decide which delivery strategy is best? So in today's webinar, one of the things you're going to learn is how to use Bloom's taxonomy, learning verbs, to analyze learning needs for the purpose of media selection. And some of the takeaways you're going to get today are a comprehensive list of the latest delivery strategies, including tried and true classroom and e-learning, as well as innovative techniques such as gamification, social networking, and you need that today, forums, knowledge bases, and more. And we're going to include a brainstorming session so you can contribute some of your own favorites. You're going to get an example of macro design, micro design, so you can see how to match both large and small scale delivery strategies. And you're going to get a graphical cheat sheet that you can use in future projects to match delivery strategies to learning needs. And then finally, a technology assessment that you can use on future projects to assess clients' current and potential technology options. Now, this person that is doing the presentation today is an amazing presenter. Theresa Davenport is the president of Davenport Design and Development, a training and development firm which powers D3 University. She's led and been a team member on more than 50, count them, 50, that's a whole lot of projects, 50 large-scale learning and organizational development projects in all organizational sectors, including technology, manufacturing, healthcare, services, and government. And her passion, I love this, her passion is to empower others to use their knowledge, skills, and abilities at the highest level. And I can't hear you clapping, but if you can clap, go ahead and do that in your office. Don't make too much noise. Do a soft clap so we can give Theresa some little energy to get moving here. All right, Theresa, how are you today? Are you there?
I am here, and Robert, that was an awesome kickoff. Thank you so much. I think Justin's going to be transitioning us into the presentation that begins with the slides that I have prepared, and I'm not going to repeat what Robert has said. I'm just going to move right along and get us started. I will point out that on the D3 University, I think Robert mentioned, if you would like to take the course that I have out there, this is a coupon code that will give you a discount. That course is for people who are maybe getting started in instructional design or want a really solid base in how to write learning objectives and get some sound ID methodology that ties right back into Bloom's taxonomy. So I'd love for you to check that out. Also, if you, as you can see right here, just link in with me through my LinkedIn link right there, or connect with me via email or through my website. That would be great. So let's just go ahead and hop in here and get started. Our topics today are how Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom's revised taxonomy, drives delivery strategies. And it drives the choices we make as learning architects, which is what I'm going to call us, rather than instructional designers, which I know some of you are. But it really, Bloom's revised taxonomy is going to be our kind of our engine for selecting delivery strategies. We're also going to look at a concept that I call the Delta window, which allows us as learning architects to consider our customers' current mindset and delivery capabilities. We are also going to assess available delivery options, and that's really the meat of what we're going to do today, and how to select and combine the best delivery options given what the learner is trying to learn, and use those delivery options to look at a macro and maybe a couple of micro design strategies so you guys can put our learning to work immediately. So let's go ahead and jump in and just find out a little bit about what you know about Bloom's taxonomy. I think we have a poll ready to go here. I just want to know, how much do you know about Bloom's taxonomy? I use it all the time. I refer to it occasionally when doing projects. I've heard of it. I've never heard of it. And Justin, you're going to load us a poll, right? There he goes. That ain't it. We've got a poll somewhere.
We may have to go informal on this one.
Okay, well then just use the chat. And I'm just going to watch for just a minute and see. I've never heard of it, use it all the time. All right, let me do a little scrolling here. Okay, we're running the gamut here. Awesome. Heard of it, never heard of it. Okay, I get the idea. We're all across the board on this. So to make sure that we are on a level playing field, we're going to jump in and start at the beginning of Bloom's revised taxonomy. And notice I do have the word revised in there. Here's why. Benjamin Bloom created his original learning taxonomy. He actually published it, I think, around 1956. And then some years later, some of his protégés, students, people who had worked with his taxonomy, Anderson and Craswell specifically, worked from about 95 to 2001 to make improvements to his taxonomy. So if you go on Google and you query Bloom's taxonomy, you'll find both Bloom's and Bloom's revised. They're still widely used today. And I have found Bloom's revised taxonomy to be truer to how I see people learning. So let's take a look at it. Here's how it breaks down. First of all, with remembering. Remembering involves recognizing, recalling knowledge from memory. Remembering is when memory is used so that you can produce a definition or a fact or recite a list or retrieve material that you have accessible in your head. So I like to think of preschoolers learning when we learned our ABCs. We didn't really know what the ABCs meant at first, but we could sing the ABC song and we could recognize letters when we saw them. So think of that remembering phase as the information has to be learned before other phases of learning can begin. And then we have understanding, and that's the phase where we are constructing meaning from different types of functions. They might be written or graphic messages, activities like identifying, describing, interpreting, explaining. That's what we're doing when we understand. So the information that was memorized now starts to make sense, and learners know what to do with it. So understanding is the aha moment. In our ABC analogy, learners would now be able to understand that letters form words. And by the way, the little arrows you see at the right with the verbs, if you've been doing instructional design for any period of time, you have used some learning verbs to write learning objectives. So these are just a few samples that correlate with each level of Bloom's taxonomy. If you've never used these before, after the presentation today, I highly encourage you to go out there and just look at, on Google, Bloom's taxonomy learning verbs, and you'll see an amazing set of learning verbs available to you. Now, applying is the next level in Bloom's revised taxonomy, and the learner can actually do something at the applying phase with the knowledge and the understanding that he now has. An observer could watch or look at the outputs of this applying level to assess the knowledge and how well a learner understands the concepts. So in our example, now this person knows her ABCs, she understands they're used to form words, and at applying level, she can read and write using those letters. Now in the analyzing phase, back to breaking down. You're looking at a big picture, and you're able to break that big picture back down into concepts or parts, and how those parts relate to one another or to an overall structure or purpose. At this level, learners are able to distinguish between those components and parts. So in the case of our ABCs and reading and writing, at this point, a learner would be able to diagram a sentence. So maybe identify certain words as nouns or verbs or other parts of speech. In the next level, we've got evaluating. In the evaluating level, a learner is able to make judgments based on criteria and standards, like using a check sheet or critiquing or using a rubric. So the outputs might be a critique, a recommendation, a report. These are products that might come from someone learning or applying the evaluating level of learning. So at this level of learning, you're going to see a lot of case studies, scenarios, role plays. In our ABC scenario, a learner might assess the quality of writing using a rubric, such as if you're in a class and you exchange a paper with your peer and you critique each other's writing using a rubric. The last level, the highest level, is the creating level. And at this level of Bloom's Revised Taxonomy, learners are putting together a new construct to create something that didn't exist before. And this is considered the most difficult mental function in Bloom's Revised Taxonomy. So in our writing example, think of writing a novel as an example of creating in our ABC example. Writing music is an example of creating, or creating a new paradigm, such as a new learning methodology. That would be something we are doing in our field, using a new fuel to power an engine, taking something that you know and applying your knowledge and understanding to create something that did not exist. That's this level. So I love this because as learning architects, instructional designers, we apply Bloom's Revised Taxonomy all the time because we have to ascend through these levels each time we create a new learning solution, and we end up at the top, and I think that's really cool. One thing I want to talk about before we jump into delivery strategies, and that is segmenting them between primary and secondary, because we're going to think in this way for the rest of this hour, and that is, think of a primary delivery strategy as an overall delivery vehicle, like a classroom course. Then think of a secondary delivery strategy as something that might be provided to go along with that classroom course. We've used handouts, knowledge bases if you're using a computer and you're online, an app, PDF documents online, all sorts of things that a person might access or use as a complement to that overall delivery, the primary delivery strategy. So as we go along today, think in terms of primary and secondary, and I will bring you back to this point several times. So looking at the big picture of Bloom's taxonomy, now let's match Bloom's revised, it's not up there, taxonomy to some delivery strategies so you can see how this might how they might work together. First of all, I want to start with static online or static resources, not necessarily even online. They might be print. I do have online right there. And notice this category stretches from remembering all the way up through creating, and that's because these are usually secondary delivery strategies that are used as a support to a primary delivery strategy. For example, in that classroom scenario I just mentioned, you might use some static resources like a PDF document, a handout, a job aid, a quick reference guide, also known as QRG, procedure manual, a process chart. They may not have been part of your, may not have been part of your core course, but you wanted your learners to access them. And by static, we mean that the learner does not interact with them directly. They don't interact with them. They can just see them. They're for reference only. So perhaps now you might be able to see how they might be used all the way up through creating level, because at the creating level, if you're having a brainstorm session, you might not remember every little nuance of every concept or term that you wanted to use. So you would look back at your knowledge base or whatever it is to recall the information that you needed for your brainstorming. Now, another type of delivery strategy that I've grouped together is e-learning or mobile learning, app learning. And in my opinion, these are the greatest use at the bottom of Bloom's Revised Taxonomy because they're an excellent strategy for quickly learning new information and concepts. Now notice this box only goes up into the analysis phase. You can go with e-learning up into some scenarios and role plays and things in evaluating, and that is certainly possible. I've done it plenty, but what you cannot do with your e-learning and apps is respond to open-ended questions. You know, when someone answers, you can't evaluate their open-ended answer. You can't evaluate their performance immediately if they're trying to do something that has to be visually observed and feedback needs to be given. So there are some limitations with e-learning and apps, but it is ideal for an interactive environment for mastering new terms and concepts and information. Now notice I have not listed the classroom yet. I actually have the classroom moving further up Bloom's taxonomy, and that's because I recommend the classroom either in virtual as well as a live classroom for to avoid the things like the 30-minute lecture, which I'm trying to avoid here. But I like to use it further on down after learners have already been exposed to those basic concepts and terms in hopefully an e-learning environment or using some other resource before they came to the. So this makes it much more engaging for the learner and allows the learners when they come to the classroom to be immediately interactive with the facilitator. Concepts are already introduced, and the classroom experience can actually begin by recalling and reinforcing the knowledge and understanding that was gained earlier through you could use some creative activities right off the bat and then move into some practice applications, scenarios, and role plays as you move on up Bloom's revised taxonomy, and finally some brainstorming at the top. And finally, I have a fourth group, and that is the on-site, or what we typically think of as OJT, or on-the-job learning. And that is a great follow-on to the classroom. I love it when people leave a classroom and they have something immediately applicable that they're ready to do. They've actually had an attitude and a behavior, a thought, and possibly an action change in their lives. They need a place to work it out, to actually practice it beyond the classroom. So OJT is an excellent follow-up to that. And when they leave in the classroom, they have a lot of supportive guidance from the facilitator. And then when they go to an on-the-job environment, they have the assistance of a coach, perhaps, or an experienced coworker. And as that learner becomes more proficient, less guidance is required until finally the learner is no longer a learner, but a confident, independent doer. So now we've gone from accessing resources, static resources, or accessing them through an e-learning app, through a classroom experience that allowed for some more interactivity, reinforcement of concepts, guided practice, and then on into the on-the-job practice. So what I would like to do now is dig just a little deeper at each level, breaking it down and giving you some opportunities to share some primary and secondary delivery strategies that you found useful. So let's look at these really quickly. Going back to the remembering and understanding phase, a definition for a delivery strategy at this level is it's a vehicle for information delivery, concepts, rules, guidelines, characteristics. That is what your delivery strategy should provide. So its characteristics are interactivity for your primary delivery strategy at remembering and understanding. And I'm combining these just to keep things a little shorter, and because typically you can use primary and secondary strategies for both of these, the same type. So the primary strategy should be interactive. Learners are kept engaged. And I think the best vehicle is e-learning, and underneath that umbrella I'm including anything they might learn as part of an app or a mobile learning strategy. Secondary delivery strategies can be static. No interactivity is required, but they should be sporadic and at the point of need, such as a hyperlinked glossary or a job aid or a QRG or an operating procedure. And also it's important to note that at the remembering and understanding levels of learning, the learner does not necessarily have to be in the environment where the skills are going to be applied. You don't have to be in a real job environment as you're learning concepts. So I would like to open up a chat real quickly and think in terms of primary and secondary and ask you guys to list some things that you have found to be helpful at the remembering and understanding levels of learning, some delivery strategies that you have used or you think you'd like to use, that you think it would fit in either category. So if you can, list one primary and one secondary at least. If you have more ideas of a secondary, that would be great. And Justin, if you could open up that chat. There you go. So what do you think are ideal primary delivery strategies related to remembering and understanding, primary on the left and secondary on the right? Okay, great feedback. Yeah, a lot of you keep coming back to different forms of e-learning and self-paced e-learning. Absolutely, gamification, awesome. Flashcards. I'm looking in the primary column right now. The video is excellent. Video is one of those static things. It's, of course, there's a lot of movement, but the learner is not necessarily interacting with the video. Um, Web-based video, interactive PDFs, which is on the verge of being right back to an e-learning module. Okay, excellent. I'm going to look over here at the secondary column now. Quiz apps, those are great. Job aids, word search. Yeah, you sort of get into thinking through, okay, these are more like instructional strategies that are our learning activities. It does sort of, it has that sort of feel. A wiki, that is awesome. I didn't mention that earlier. I was hoping someone else would. RoboHelp, perfect. That's what we're talking about. So you link your RoboHelp to your e-learning simulation or course, reference guides. Okay, you guys get the idea. That is excellent. All right, well, I'm going to move on. Okay. And let's talk about applying now. Applying delivery strategy is a vehicle for demonstrating mastery of skills, knowledge, and abilities. So what is the ideal environment for a learner to do that? It should provide a setting for measuring and demonstrating mastery, might include some simulations, might include some real-world environments. So this is where the classroom enters as a viable primary delivery strategy, and it could be your virtual classroom. If you don't need to see your participants, your learners, if you don't need to provide them feedback based on their visual observation, or it could be a physical classroom if you do have people that you need to observe and provide feedback to. So let's move on to our chat, and I would like to hear from you about some creative applying strategies that you've learned either on the primary or secondary side. And that, again, it could be, I don't want to limit your thoughts. I listed a few right here on the screen, like OJT, e-learning sims, and so on. So let's hear from you guys. Okay, on the left, if you would just list a few primary, and on the right, some secondary delivery strategies. Task sims, oh, that's awesome. Simulations, yeah. And I would be interested if you could just add anybody who puts the simulations. Have you used them for anything other than, I see a task, anything other than, say, learning a new technology, like a new app or new software? A science lab, awesome. Okay, and then science lab is over here is a secondary. And, a lot of these things can go both ways. Collaborative problem solving is a secondary. That's excellent. Okay. Yeah, test systems. Okay, and sales and marketing training sims. Yeah, that's good. And a lot of these, I think we'll probably come back when we get to the analysis and evaluation phase and think, well, it could have worked there too. And that's what you'll see is that some of the strategies we're talking about, that as I showed you in those boxes, they really can run up and down Bloom's taxonomy. All right, very good. Okay, let's go back to our presentation, Justin. Thank you. All right, and let's move on. And I have also chunked together analyzing and evaluating because I'm finding you can use case studies and scenarios in both levels of analyzing and evaluating. It's useful for taking apart the components, that's analysis, And then exploring relationships or justifying a course of action. For example, why did, in the scenario, why did the performer do what they did? That's what you're looking at in a case study or a scenario. So the characteristics here is it often goes from something simple that you could relate to, perhaps at the application phase, and then it quickly moves you to, all right, this is getting more complex, but I'm having to apply those same rules and guidelines that I'd already learned. That's what the case studies and role plays do for you. So they could be a part of an e-learning course, or ideally for a classroom course to give better feedback or more specific feedback. And your secondary strategies might include, again, rubrics, some objective criteria that everyone is using the same criteria so that everyone gets judged in the same way. Performance worksheets accomplish the same thing. So let's move on to our chat, and I would like to hear some creative strategies that you guys have learned, or excuse me, that have used or think you'd like to use for the analysis and evaluation levels of learning. So we've got primary again on the left and secondary on the right. What do you think is the best vehicle, the primary vehicle for the analysis and evaluation levels? This is where we're judging, critiquing, taking apart to identify all the different parts of the whole. Troubleshooting, yeah, troubleshooting's great. Formal assessments, that's yeah, formal assessments could probably also be a primary delivery strategy. Yes, course assessments. They provide that validity. They're measuring not only understanding at this level. Course assessments are measuring one's ability to evaluate. So those course assessments could still be in the form of a scenario. Did the learner evaluate the scenario properly? Yeah, commenting on a blog. That's something that not many of you have mentioned yet. I think I might have seen earlier, incorporating communities of practice, discussion boards, any teach-backs, that's great. But we, especially if you've done any online courses, academia, you'll see discussion boards used extensively. The professor will ask you, they'll give you a case, and you spend the whole week in a discussion with your group to determine, what are the different aspects of the case, or how should the case be judged. Knowledge checks. Okay, and then we have over on the right policy manuals, problem procedures, and so on. Okay. All right, great. Okay. Justin, if you could move us along there. All right, and finally, we come to creating delivery strategies, and this is providing a setting for generating new ideas, products, processes, or ways of viewing things. When you try to picture either for yourself or for a group of learners, what is the best environment to put them in? And also think activities here. What are the best activities in which they can participate in to create? So brainstorming activities, and I've got some list of the types of things you might do as a part of creating, working more efficiently, process mapping. Primary examples might be, again, in a classroom or participating on a discussion board, which is a little harder to be collaborative there when the back and forth may not be immediate. And then secondary, again, if you're accessing a knowledge base or a community of practice, those are some examples. But I want to hear from you. We haven't talked much about all the online options that are available, such as YouTube and blogs. But I would like to know if any of you have used those successfully for yourself. Think about yourself. If you're not thinking as far as a classroom, where do you get your primary and secondary resources when you're trying to create something? Where are some places that you look? And when you're trying to collaborate with others, what are some of your best formats for doing that? So Justin, if you would put that chat back up, and let's look at some primary and secondary ways that we learn the best, delivery strategies. Okay. Yep, YouTube. And if you, Donna Carter. So is today's meet, is it like an app? I'll have to check that out. That's neat. Padlet, I'll have to check that out. That's what I'm excited about, is just seeing what are people using that the rest of us, me, may not be familiar with. Real-time conference calls, absolutely. Social media, yes. You know, I access LinkedIn a lot for the groups there when I'm trying to get ideas. Webinars, podcast, yep. Communities of practice, yep. Google Docs is great for immediate collaboration. Everybody's looking at one screen. Everyone can edit it together, which can be really interesting and fun. All right, blogs. Okay. Membership communities, yeah, that's what I was saying about LinkedIn, WordPress, blogs. Awesome. Yeah. So, and before we leave this, just look at what we've got right there and then think back. Okay, the last time I developed a course that had a creative component in it, was I leveraging these things for my learners? Like I said, I know I use it myself when I'm in the creative area, but are we properly leveraging it for our learners would be my question back to you. And Justin, you can go ahead and pull us back to the presentation. Those were great, great insights. On the next screen right here, I've just got a job aid. I don't expect you to read it right here, but I wanted you to know that I do have it. I believe Justin told us it's in the promotion slides back at the beginning of this presentation. He has a link to this, so you can download it. If you can break it apart, you can just add any other ideas. Just keep it going as your own job aid, but it's meant to be a job aid that covers the discussion that we've just had. So it's pretty extensive, just based on what I already had on the screen, but I'd love for you to be able to add your own insights as well. So something I wanted to introduce today is it's one thing for us as learning architects to know the best learning solution for a given set of learning objectives. You know this is the best way for the learner to learn this. But it's quite another thing to convince your customer that it's the right thing or the best thing. Often they don't have the means or the culture to accept your recommendation. So that's why I wanted to mention the Delta window as a way to think about organizational culture and current technology and whether the organization is ready to accept your recommended delivery strategy. In political theory, the Overton window has been around for a while. It refers to a citizenry's tolerance for change. And the assumption is that change will in some way restrict freedom and increase the government's power and control over its citizenry. So the Overton window has sort of a negative connotation, but over a span of time, an idea is perceived initially as outrageous, then dangerous, then possible, then necessary. Now, in the learning and development world, as learning architects, we are tasked with introducing how technology, or any delivery medium for that matter, can be leveraged for learning. And sometimes our suggestions are not well received because they're too far outside the current culture or the ability of the customer to provide the technology that we're recommending. So, for example, if we're recommending an e-learning solution for the customer, but the customer doesn't have an LMS, then it's a no-go at that particular moment. So you or we, as learning architects, have to find the organization's Delta window and start from there and begin to migrate those stakeholders toward the best delivery strategy. So let's look at this just a little more deeply. You can see I just mentioned stakeholders, and in these triangles at the bottom, we've got stakeholders, and strategies, and systems. And when you assess, you find out what the real state is. But what you ideally want to do is you want your customer to go with the ideal state for the learner. Now, in Greek, the uppercase delta, or it's the D in our alphabet, it's a symbol used to represent change over time. So I created the term Delta window as a picture of the current mindset of stakeholders' views of those strategies and systems that shape their organization, and the speed at which the organization's stakeholders can adapt new strategies and systems that reflect the best environment for performance improvement. And that was a mouthful, but basically what we're saying is the delta window is how we try to shift from the real state to the ideal state. So the delta window is a snapshot of stakeholder perceptions or change over time. And like the Overton window, the delta window shares the notion of an idea being perceived as perhaps unrealistic and eventually becoming necessary, but it does not share the negative connotations of increased organizational power and control. Also, remember the delta window should always be shifting because there are always new avenues, new technologies, and new learning strategies to consider. I'm not going to focus on this one much, but this is one little example. If you pull down this presentation later, if you link to it, this is a link to, the title is a link to a study here in the third column in 2012. This is about a 20-year span, just showing how academia has warmed up to the idea of distance learning. And this was, I had a front row seat to this because in 1990 I can remember asking a chancellor, wouldn't you like to entertain the idea of distance learning for your university? You already have a great instructional design program. You're known for your educational technology. You're being a frontier on the frontier there. And he's like, no, our geographic our funding restricts us to geographic boundaries. Our student base they don't have the means to access online learning, and we just don't have the infrastructure. And then 10 years later, the perception, it was more of a perception issue around the early 2000s. It was just, well, we feel in other words, the decision makers, the stakeholders, we feel that distance learning is not the best way of learning. It's not the college experience that we want for our students. And then by 2012, again, this study was really interesting, and you can see the stats there, but most universities are offering online learning, online degrees, and the academic leaders, 77%, rate their learning outcomes online education as the same or superior to those in the physical classroom. So this is an example of the delta window in practice. And this was over a 20-year period. A lot of times we as learning architects, we're trying to help a customer or a client or an internal organization make a transition in a few months or a year or a few years or a fiscal year, and much more quickly. But perhaps you've seen this in your own experiences. Also, I'll point out, I've got a blog that I've expanded on this concept. If you want to learn more about it, there's the link to the blog at the bottom of this window. But right now, what I'd really like to hear is, what are your experiences? Have you experienced the delta window? Have you seen it at work? What was, in just a phrase or two, where did you experience? You knew the best delivery strategy, but the client wasn't ready. Or you moved the delta window from here to there. So, Justin, if you would pull that chat back up again, I would just, oh no, we were going to do this on an open chat, weren't we? Yeah, just down at the bottom in your chat window. If anyone has an experience they would like to share. Yes, accepting blended learning. Like I said, a lot of times they're all for it, but we don't have an LMS. And we, as change agents, learning architects, sometimes we have to say, well, you can rent an LMS, and here's where. You have to go out there and do a little bit of research to help them warm up to those ideas. Anyone else? Some of my own experiences, going paperless in the classroom, encouraging instead of printed manuals, if they've got a computer or if they have tablets, having them access their materials online on their tablet, have a few interactive, the pages for the activities where they can type instead of writing, valuing SMEs as SMEs rather than doing things, being a SME outside their regular job. Course conversion, yes, that's a big one. Yes, technology in the classroom, textbooks to e-books. Right. Yeah, I think one big shift and one big takeaway from all of us is trying to convince organizations to pull out the conceptual parts of their classroom learning, convert it to e-learning, and I think they'll very soon see the payoff in doing that. All right. Well, we're running a little, I wouldn't say short yet, but I do want to cover a few more things. I'm going to move on. Welcome you to keep on adding to that chat. It's great stuff. I wanted to cover a few scenarios and let you think about these. This is what I'll call a micro scenario, and we have a cable company. Drivers need to learn to use a new app. So they've got to use it to get to their service calls using something like Google Maps that would be in the app. They've got to update their status every time they go from one customer to the other. Remember, they're cable guys, installing, deinstalling, whatever, checking in and out equipment, accessing and editing customer records. So given this micro scenario, what would you think would be a primary delivery strategy that would work well for this type of situation? And I think, Justin, did we prepare a chat here where they could list primary and secondary? Yeah. So it's the new app. How should they best learn their new app? What would the best delivery strategy be as far as the primary delivery strategy? Yes. Yep. On their tablet. Why put it somewhere else? If they've got to learn how to use an app, why put the training somewhere else? I think that's a very good point. Would you have any secondary resources? Anything else they might access? A cable TV channel? Okay. Job aids, printed or online? Lists and databases? Yeah, the databases, got to have those. That's the customer information. A playground on their device. Sims, love it, yes. A QRG as the secondary. Daily tips, I love that. Cable game, find the customer, pre-recorded webinars. Okay, awesome. Wow. We could sit right here and have a course design very soon, I think, for our cable company. A lab filled with typical problems. Yeah, you definitely need that. Searchable knowledge base. Okay, those are great. My vision, and you guys may have already done this, may have seen it work really well. I think I would go with the mobile app as the primary vehicle. Mobile app learning. Learn on the app where the app actually resides. In fact, if you can break down, if it was done in Storyline or whatever, you could break it down and actually have your little modules attached to the icons that they have to use. Maybe they would take one longer version of the course and then break it down into little, almost like a robo-help tutorial that's attached to their icons within the app. All right, that's great. Justin, if you could take us back, and we'll try to flip through one more. I wanted to think about more of one in the, we've been mostly talking about Bloom's cognitive domain. The affective domain has to do more with soft skills, attitudinal learning, and coaching skills is a good example of this. So if you had to design a course for coaching skills for new managers where they had to learn how to observe behavior, assess performance, and provide constructive feedback, what might your primary and secondary vehicles be for that type of learning? And again, if we could see that those chat windows for this type of learning, coaching skills, what would your primary delivery vehicle be for that? And if you want more than one, if you want to start in one place and transition to another, consider that role play, yeah. Classroom workshop, video, yeah. So if it's coaching skills, what would you do about the concepts and terms that they might need to learn before they begin practicing their role play? E-learning pre-work, yes, okay. Creates video vignettes, oh, that's awesome. Interact with fictional employees, very good. Yep, tip sheets, awesome, is a secondary resource. Yes, you could do some online. If you had a VILT, you could do some online. You could do some collaborative learning that way. Q&A sessions with SME coaches. That's great. Good stuff, guys. All right, well, I'm going to move on. I had one more I wanted us to at least think about. I think we can tackle it if we move quickly. This next one is a macro scenario. It's a big picture, new hire onboarding for a financial services company. So we're dealing with, who's the company? What are my benefits? Where do I go? What's the layout of this office or this whole campus? What are the product services provided by my financial institution I work for? What is my role within the institution? What systems do I need to learn how to use in order to do my job? What is a day in the life of a worker really like, someone that's already doing my job? So these are the typical things you might go through in an onboarding with a large financial services company. And what I'd like to do for this chat, look at this list, and before we go to the chat, pick out the one that is closest or close to the first letter of your last name. So if it's tech systems and your last name starts with is Thomas, that would be yours. But find one of these, pick it out, and just for that one, then we'll move to the chat. Let's go on to that, move to the chat, and for that one, list what it is, if it's campus tour, if it's tech systems, and then a colon, and what your primary delivery strategy would be for that particular aspect of the new hire onboarding. So list, and I can name them if you don't remember them, or I could type them down here in the chat. It was who we are, employee benefits, campus tour, products and services, my role, tech systems, and day in the life. Okay, so virtual online tour, okay. It's interesting, everyone's saying a virtual tour of the campus. What would be a way you could take the tour of the campus in a fun way where you did a physical tour? What would make that interesting besides just walking around? Scavenger hunt, absolutely. Let's see, has anyone taken, how would you learn your products and services? Could someone take that one? Geocaching, I love it. That is fun. First you got to take a class on geocaching. Conversation with supervisor for my role. What about a job shadowing, starting to do some structured job shadowing? Remember we talked about OJT and having some worksheets where you might observe for some specific things. Let's see. Okay, I think we've about covered it. That's good. But the big takeaway here, this is called New Hire Onboarding. It's one big course. But look at all the primary delivery strategies we have. It's not just one. They didn't sit in a classroom for 2 weeks. They're doing some ELNs to learn their products and services. They're doing some job shadowing to learn their role. They're doing a scavenger hunt to do a tour of the campus. They're doing e-learning for their tech services, for their tech systems, maybe some online before they go to a class, and maybe some sims once they get in the classroom. Wow, the day in the life of, they might actually shadow with one person for an entire day. But again, the big takeaway is when you're looking at a macro course that has a large overall arching course goal and some very diverse I wouldn't even call them enabling objectives, but sub-objectives, then you're talking about numerous primary delivery strategies, and underneath that, numerous secondary delivery strategies. It makes for a very busy design document for sure, and a very busy schedule. I would love, I don't know if we have a show of hands here, but just show of hands if you've ever had to design, yeah we do, if you've ever had to design something large like this that had multiple deliveries, types of deliveries. Yeah. Yeah, I see the hands. It's a big job. And I'm hoping that what we've gone through today will help you start to compartmentalize those into, yeah, what I was doing really makes sense, and now I know why, or now I've got some more tools for ensuring that my instructional strategies, my delivery strategies are appropriate for what's being learned. Okay, awesome. Well, we'll move on out of this, and let's see. I think if we have any time, if you did have any more questions, just any questions that came up during the webinar that I did not notice, or anything you would like to know about that we've talked about, we have another few minutes. Okay, well, the examples everyone is sharing, yeah, I wondered, Justin, could you offer in chat a way, is there a way that the chats have been, will they be saved in some way so we can go back and look at all the great ideas everyone had for their different types of delivery strategies?
Yeah, we can. Well, they're certainly not going anywhere. So,
Okay.
after the session, maybe you and I can connect and think of a way to
Great. I would love to
synthesize
provide
that.
that to everyone. Okay. Um, all right. And then the job aid, Justin, how do they get to that job aid that was on slide?
The document. Well, that would
Yeah.
be a
Uh-huh.
good segue. If you want to, I mean, if we're done and we don't have any more questions coming through, we can move into the those last few promotional slides and then the
Yeah.
feedback slides, and I can. That's where the I can just kind of take it from there and
Okay, that would be
make sure
great.
folks
Yeah.
know where that
Thank
is.
you. Okay.
All
Thanks,
right.
Justin.
Yeah,
Oh,
and thank you very much, Teresa. That was awesome, awesome presentation. I'm always so lucky I get to sit in on these as a producer, but I always get a lot out of them myself. So right now, in the bottom left-hand side of the screen, you can see there's a pod called Delivery Strategies. You should be able to click on that file called Delivery Strategies. It's an image file. You click on that and then download the files. While you're doing that, I'm going to just move through a few of our final promotional slides, and then I'd ask you to stick around. We do have feedback, a feedback layout that I'd like you to provide some feedback, and we do take that seriously to improve these offerings each time. Up on the screen now, Harrisburg University, we have numerous programs, graduate and undergraduate. Come certainly check us out. Keep on moving through here. Our professional development and webinar series are all excellent. You've seen the TrainingPros information, but we're providing that for you again. Love the work that they're doing, and Robert's high energy was awesome for the intro today. And then we have Teresa's information here. She's got a few things going on, so feel free to check this out. And this will all be available in the recording, so you don't have to feverishly copy these links down, but they'll be available. So we'll move through Teresa's slides here. And Teresa's D3 University, which sounds awesome. And Harrisburg University has our 4 on the 4th at 4. Feel free to check us out there. Those are great webinars, a good series as well, and we have one coming up in August. So at this point, I thank you for sticking around. I'm going to move us to the feedback layout here. If you can, just please provide us the feedback in the different windows here. I thank you all very much for joining. It was a great session. These are always great sessions, and thanks TrainingPros, and thank you Teresa, and thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you.